Welcome back to Nick Lenz's Comic Corner Classic Non-Classics. This is episode number 2121, Doubleshot 2015. I got two Batman-related trades, both kind of finales in a way. This first one's a finale for this trade series. The other one is the finale for talk about issues released in this decade. Alright, first up we have is The Joker by James Tynion IV, Volume 3. Collects the last 6 issues of this really good ongoing series. Yes, I had heard a while ago when Tynion left Batman that this book would be ending too for some reason. I don't know why. Like, they ended the book. I'll get to it and replaced it. It is quite weird. So, basically in this book we find out that Bane is alive. Yes, Bane is alive. And the fact that he meets his daughter for the first time. The Joker himself is somewhat dealt with anyway. He's not killed per se, but he is taken to custody. We have more evidence in here. We also have Matthew Rosberg as a co-writer. I'll get to the reason for that with artwork by Gassama Kabakali, Francesco Varsovia, Cam Smith, Lorenzo Ruggiero, and Andrea Dabenito. Mostly put basically, we start with issue 10, which is a flashback issue. Probably, by the way, this is on by Francis Marcovola. This is really good art. I love this guy's artwork. I'm a big fan of his artwork. So it's basically kind of a noir story, all focused on, of course, James Gordon. During the early years of his career with James Gordon Jr. Is there with Batman, and by the way, this issue is just a standalone issue. Yep, and then next issue is basically back to the main story. Yep. And we have, a flashback to this guy who was basically a gangster who apparently killed somebody and burned his head in gloves. We have several, and basically we have where Jim Gordon is basically getting restless because he's wounded, and of course basically he's there with his daughter, aka Batgirl. And by the way, in the very issue you also have Cassandra Cain, Batgirl, as well. Great to see her in this comic. Yep. And by the way, not the first time James Tynion has written this character. As a matter of fact, he actually co-wrote the series that basically brought this continuity, Batman Around Eternal. So make her in this book makes total sense. So we got a little bit into Vengeance, a little bit of her backstory. And then apparently, for some reason, Bane is connected to the Court of Owls. For reasons. I don't know why. Joker barely appears on the book because it's all focused on James Gordon. And then we have this guy who apparently knew the Joker at some point. And then we finally have Vengeance show up in issue number 12. Yes, issue 12, after being absent for the last couple issues. Dog Parker, her brother. And of course, James Gordon doesn't mind the fact that Batgirl is being his bodyguard. You have a woman, Cassandra. And of course, then we reveal this guy in the bulky suit is actually Bane in disguise. Yes, Bane is alive. Now, how was this guy alive despite the fact he was killed by the Joker during Infinite Crisis? Then we have Batgirl taking on Talon. Yeah, Cassandra Cain taking on Talon. Which you're like, wow, that sounds like Gail Simone doing that. You know, a Batgirl taking on a Talon. But this is not any ordinary Talon. Oh no. Yep. So, yeah, then of course Vengeance killed the people, these cyborg gangsters. And of course she beats up the Joker. And then she meets up with her father. She says, "Hello, daughter. It's the time we spoke. Yes, the badass Bane is back." And then pretty much in the way, the last couple issues, it just slowly wrapped up the series. And of course, did they kill the Joker? No, not really. Joker's not dead. But Bane is alive, somehow. So it's implied that the fact that Bane may have faked his death. And then, of course, apparently Batman showed up. By the way, Batman is wearing his Batman Inc. costume. Yes, for some reason, this actually is not Tynion doing this per se. You know, having him go this costume. This actually was Chip Zdarsky's idea. Yes, that was the first they went back to this outfit. Yeah, that's where the Joker is. And then the final issue basically is talking about, we just have Batman and Jim Gordon talking all about the Joker. And apparently Cassandra was actually one of the women from early Batman. Yeah, it's a bit of a retcon. Now, Tinny of doing this is fine, given the fact that him and Scott Snyder co-wrote the Court of Owls story. Having her being the blonde woman from that story makes total sense. I have no problem with this revelation. And then we have Cassandra Cain versus the Talon, who turns out to be James Gordon Jr., who is a Talon. And he's like James Jr. So yeah, you're going to fix him. And of course you have Joker. You have stuff related to... Then we have, Cassandra take away the third woman. And of course, basically, Batman Jim Gordon kind of... And we have the book, and Cassandra can shot the Joker. Yep, and then Joker basically where Jim Gordon's back home and just sleeps. Yeah. But this book is really good. Love it. Despite being called the Joker, it's Jim Gordon's series. I give this book a 10 out of 10. It's really good. Now, I'll talk in a bit about why Matthew Rosenberg is here. Final thoughts on the Joker series by Jameson IV. Really good series. Like, I read it when it first came out, like just not even a couple years ago. Damn good book. I loved every issue this book came out with. The book even had an annual, surprisingly. Now, of course, not the first series called The Joker. Because, well, they did have a book, basically, for him back in the 70s. By Neil Adams, of course. And it lasted for 9 issues. Having the 10th issue published in the 2000s, which is interesting to say the least. Yes. And, well, we have a high note, and that's what Vengeance doing nowadays. Don't know. Bane was also seen in Task Force X at the same period of time as well, where he's a zombie. Yeah, I thought that was kind of weird. But yes, the explanation of why Matthew Rosenberg is here. The reason why he is here is because he wrote the relaunch of this book. The book that replaced this one. A book known as The Joker, the Man Who Stopped Laughing. A book to this day has only released 5 issues. Now you're probably thinking, Nick, why in the world was it released 5 issues? Because they just started. And this book is very controversial. You're probably asking, why is this book controversial? First few issues were fine. By the way, Francis Ford does a backup story for that one. It is controversial due to the backup story from issue 4. An issue that has become very despised recently. The reason for this is because Matthew Rosenberg decided to write a story where Joker became pregnant with a baby. The Joker. How did this happen? Zatanna gave him a spell and made him pregnant. And they gave birth to this goo thing. Apparently it's his son and Zatanna's son. Yeah, it's weird. And by the way, I read the very next issue. Never mentioned. It's almost like the backup stories are basically just basically Elseworld stories. Just feature the Joker. Love the artwork. Don't like the story. It is strange that Matthew Rosenberg wrote the main story and the backup story. Why did he do this? I have no idea. Yeah, so you replaced a good series with an okay series with a not very good backup feature. Yes, for some reason the book has a backup feature. I do not know why Joker needs one. Why Joker needs their series has a backup feature. Now I get action, detective backup feature, because it has that in the past. Okay, Wonder Woman having one makes sense. I don't think Flash has one I can think of. Batman doesn't currently have one. She should have one. Because these series have backup features in the past. Joker? No, he's never had one. By the way, only his 3rd ever ongoing series currently. Would I pick up the first one comes out? Yes, and I will rant all about that story. Alright, moving on to a different book. We have Batman, The Dark Knight Detective, Volume 7. Interesting thing about this book, this is the last trade to review the collect issues that came out back in the 1990s. Because with this, I'm done with the 90s for Batman. Well, Batman Detective Comics, mind you. Now the third book's just the two main books. Yeah, but this book, I'm done. I reviewed everything for that. So, we have from the Detective Comics 634, 638, 641, 643, the fourth annual Detective Comics, which I think I viewed all the annuals Detective Comics at this point in time. I think I have. There might be a few left. Along with Legends Dark Knight 27 and Batman 474. Now, these issues are mostly written by Louise Simonson, Peter Mulligan, Alan Grant, Kelly Pudick, and Denny O'Neil. Well, the late Denny O'Neil, sadly. Artwork by two artists that are sadly no longer alive. I'll get to who they are. We have Jim Fern, as far as I can, this guy's still alive. The late Jim Aparo, passed away in 2005. Lou McDonald, Tom Greenberg, Norm Baufoger, who passed away, I think it was in 2019, 2020, and Chris Spruce. The cover art is done by Dennis Cohen and Alan Pakia. Yep. Now, mostly Dark Knight Detective, in case you're not familiar with this particular trade series. This is all collecting Detective Comics that came out from post-Crisis on Infinite Earths, and it leads into the events of Nightfall. That's basically what it leads to. So, the first story was the Kelly Pudick story. It's called About the Third Man. It's basically a murder mystery, which I like the artwork for this one. Yes, I do like the artwork. Sometimes the later issues' artwork is not that good. We have mostly some standalone issues. Mostly. Just some standard stuff, but the best thing about these issues is the gorgeous artwork. Love seeing the Jason Todd more, because at the time Jason Todd was still dead. So then we have Tim Drake and Alfred Penny video games, where apparently they're playing a Superman video game, which is so funny. Yep. But yeah, more good tech stuff, fighting like a robot. And then we have like 636. Apparently, if you notice, the cover is like late September, because the book was coming out twice a month during this period of time. So mostly you have Tim as Robin, just with like a bunch of video games. That's most what these issues are, just dealing with video games. And of course you have issue 737 done by Louise Simonson with Jim Fern in the artwork. It's mostly what you have the cover of Batman and Robin versus this creature. The appearances in this, we go Arkham Asylum, appearances by the Joker, Penguin, Two-Face, all because of this psychic guy. Yeah, that's basically what this book is all about. It's called Control Freak, and that's mostly what this issue deals with. The ending was something quite special. I love this gorgeous cover artwork. It's all about Armageddon 2001, which, yeah, makes sense. Yeah. So, this basically, you might think Armageddon 2001 does way wrap up this book. No, he does. It's mostly like a bunch of time stuff, but it's a really fun annual. But sadly, no appearance by Wave Rider, because Wave Rider was printing all the annuals for Armageddon 2001, because if you're not from Armageddon 2001, this was a series of annuals released in 1991 that basically had where we have this mysterious dictated future that was a former superhero who was called Monarch. And who this was, now the plan was to have this be Captain Atom. But instead, it became Hawk instead. Which makes no sense, despite the fact all signs point to Captain Atom. What I read that happened, and I've heard Linkari mention this too, apparently the identity of the hero got leaked. In 1991, it got leaked. So DC panicked and switched it to Hawk. Then they made Captain Mark anyways later on in Extreme Justice. But yeah, love this annual. Pure fun. As for 738, this is the Peter Mulligan issue. Yes, Peter Mulligan, the guy who writes weird horror stories, writes a Batman issue. Makes total sense. Where it's Batman versus the Bomb. Yes, this guy in an armor suit looks like a version of the human Bomb from the Freedom Fighters. It's mostly a standalone story. And the last few issues here, starting with Batman 474, is known as the Destroyer. The Destroyer features a guy who's an architect who's destroying buildings. And all the buildings in Gotham are basically a key point in the story. It's an excellent 3-part crossover First part is done by Alan Grant with the late Norm Botfoger on the artwork. It is really good. Just an excellent story. Mm-hmm. Yes, you can tell it's his art because basically that's the way he draws Batman. Yep, and that's part 1. Part 2 is done by Denny O'Neil. Yep. And yeah, it's basically like a mini crossover between the 3 main Bat books. That's most of what it is, but by the way, the artwork for this issue is not done by this one's done by Chris Spruce. Yeah, that's just the artwork for the second part of the story. The third and final part is from Detective Comics 641, done by Alan Grant, with late Jim Aparo on the artwork. And I've always been a fan of Jim Aparo's artwork, and do you also be a fan of Jim Aparo? Chuck Dixon, he loved his artwork. That's why he loved basically working on the outsider stuff. So, but this book just, of course, deal with the architect, and then, of course, immediately after that story wraps up, then the final issue in here is basically the Library of Souls, and has the cover art. This, of course, is done by Jim Aparo. Diz Cohen does his artwork. I'm not really a fan of the cover art, but I love the interior by Jim Aparo. Most of it's just basically a bunch of horror stories. But this basically is the end of my reviews for Batman and to the comics issues released in the 1990s. So pretty much with this very book, I reviewed everything for these 2 series since 1987. Yep, because as soon as I found out about this book, by the way, the Air book, Cape Crusader, I haven't heard anything about Volume 7 yet, but this book, yeah, that book led to Nightfall, and this book will lead to that one too. These 2, I believe this is the last one going to be released. I have not heard any more released, but if they do, they're probably going to have to skip after Nightfall in order to start collecting more stuff here. But this is pretty much the end of my review for stuff from the 90s. I love reviews of the 90s. This is most stuff from the early 1990s per se. But I've never thought any of these issues were bad. They're just quite odd to say the least. But this mostly Comics is basically a bunch of standalone stories done by a few good, some really good writers. Yep, but yeah, not much else to say about this book. These books, good. So that's episode of you. Next episode we try Guy Stampede and then one more comic corner, and I'll probably call it a night after that. Okay, next video. Bye.